Hello everybody, this is Connor, BoatsDon'tSink, here with another Shadowverse Evolve deck profile. Today we're going to be looking at a BP03 deck, Heroic Sword. First off, what is Heroic? Heroic is an archetype that was introduced with a single card in BP02, Reign of Bahamut, that being Flame Soldier. These sort of archetype are based around like superheroes. You've got some like Common Rider aesthetic, and some other stuff. We only got one card in set 2, but here in set 3 we have the rest of the crew. We have 4 new followers and a spell, all based around the heroic trait. Most of these either care about you having heroic followers in your cemetery or on your field when you do effects. Otherwise, they don't really have a whole lot going together other than making a board, being aggressive, and doing sword things. Now, looking at the deck, reminder as usual, well, actually not as usual. Normally I say that these decks are, sort of just guidelines, first drafts meant for building around, but today we're actually going to be looking at a deck list that we used by Kira to place second in the Shadowverse Evolve Japan Championship last year. I was looking through some of the lists that people topped with, looking through the card pool, and when I went to build my own deck, I had a lot of options that I wanted to test out, but ended up every time just kind of settling back on the same 40 that Kira had. So we're going to be looking at that today, but at the end of the video I will show some other options for the deck. So here we are, the 40. It is 12 3-ofs and 4 1-ofs, so pretty straightforward, lots of consistency. You can check out the deck at the deck log code in the bottom right, and that's Q8AB. Here is our Evolve deck. Again, just pretty standard stuff. We have 2 copies of most of the Evolves that we're playing, 3 in the main deck, and then we have 1 copy of the 2 1-ofs that evolve. Taking a look at our curve, you can tell this is a pretty aggressive deck. We have 34 followers here, 30 of which either cost 1 or at least 30 of the cards, 3 of those, 6 of those are spells at costs 1 and 3. We have 12 1-cost followers, 12 3-cost followers, with 3 2-cost, a few 4-cost, and then a few 6 and 8 to just round out our top end to be able to close out games. First card we have here is Ninja Trainee. This is from set 1. This is just the 1-cost 2/2 vanilla. No text is fine. We are an aggro deck for the most part, so having this out on turn 1 forces an answer from our opponent, or we just start chunking them for 2 at a time. Second card we play is Swordsman. This is pretty much just a staple in Sword at this point, since Sword has most of its removal based around combat by making tokens, getting rush, things like that. Being able to engage enemy followers at will, both on play and as an activated ability with Swordsman, is really good for helping us remove threats that our opponent doesn't want us killing until they get to attack. As well, this guy has 2 attack, so again, a turn 1 play that we can just put on the board and start hitting face with turn 2. Old Man and Old Woman, this is the first new card that we're playing. This is a 1-cost 1/2 with Bane. I've definitely seen a few people read this card the first time and not be very impressed by the text on it, but I think in practice this card ends up a lot stronger than it reads. Being a 1-cost 1/2 with Bane means playing this on turn 1, your opponent is going to have to use spell-based removal or effect-based removal to get rid of it at some point. Otherwise, you just get to keep chipping them for 1 damage. If they ever play a follower, even playing like a 2-drop or 3-drop that evolves and can rush into it, means they're going to lose their follower. So even like a 4/4 or whatever, it dies to the Bane effect on Old Man and Old Woman. In addition, if they don't answer it, if they just let it sit there and keep chipping them for 1, eventually when they play their own big follower, you're going to be able to just swing your 1-attack, 1-cost into it and get rid of it with Bane. So this basically forces out an answer at some point, not because it's threatening a lot of damage, but because it threatens a lot of board control and board pressure, despite its low stats. Last follower we have at 1-cost is Ironwrought Defender. This is again a 1-cost 2/2, except this one has text, unlike Ninja Trainee, so this is just Goblin with upside, basically. If Fanfare, if you have at least 2 heroic cards in your cemetery, this gets +1 defense and ward, making it a 1-cost 2/3, which is a fantastic stat line for 1-cost. And ward is really good just against the decks like Dragon that are going to be spamming us with Storm followers. Even Forest, this set gets a lot of extra storm support, or at least one big storm threat that we would like to have a ward to be able to block against. Early game, this obviously isn't going to have the extra stats in ward, but it does also mean that drawing Iron Rot Defender later in the game, turns 4, 5, 6, you probably are able to get those extra stats, which makes it a pretty good play just to round out any curves. This also, all the heroic followers that we have, or heroic cards, it doesn't even care about followers. Obviously we're playing all 5 of these. He can count extra copies of himself, or the 3 of any of the other 4 that we're playing. So again, these are mostly 3 drops, so unlikely you're going to have it in the very early game. But once you've had a chance to curve out on sort of 2 and 3, getting to 4 drop, 5 drop, Iron Rot Defender is great. Last 1 drop card we have is Unbridled Fury. This is a quick spell. Select an enemy follower, deal it X damage. X equals the number of followers on your field. This has been a pretty good card already in Sword in my experience, but with this set we get even more ways to just sort of make boards out of nowhere. Amaro Spear Knight on Evolve gets us a follower from Cemetery. Floral Fencer makes 2 tokens. Amelia can cheat something into play. So we have lots of ways to just get extra bodies on board. I wouldn't recommend using this as a quick spell most of the time unless there's just nothing for you to kill offensively and you can hold up the extra play point. Otherwise, I would probably use this proactively to clear board. Just because trying to keep a high board count against most decks opens yourself up to your opponent using either effects or spells to remove your followers and weaken your Unbridled Fury before they give you a quick timing. So I would keep that in mind, try to use this proactively to clear out threats. Moving into 2 drops, our actual only 2 drop, we have Amaro Spear Knight. This is a 2-cost 2/2. Strike if there's another heroic follower on your field. This gets +1/+1. Pretty good considering we have, you know, a 1-drop heroic itself is a 2-drop heroic, and then on 3 we have 6 more heroic followers. That means that oftentimes if you play this on 2, you can untap on 3, play your heroic follower, get in for 3. It evolves into a 3/3 for paying 3, which is a rather hefty cost, but the value you get out of it's pretty good. Still has the effect that buffs itself on strike, and on evolve you select a heroic card in your cemetery and play it for 0 play points. Meaning if you run out an Iron Rot Defender or whatever on turn 1, I guess you can play this on turn 2 and then evolve it on turn 3 to get Iron Rot back, which does trigger your effect to buff, so you're going to be hitting for 4. That's not super aggressive though. We're actually using this mostly a little later in the game once we have Mach Knight in our cemetery. So Mach Knight gains Storm whenever it's put onto the field from anywhere other than our hand. So using Amaro to play it for 0 from Cemetery is going to give it Storm and let us get 3 straight to the dome. Which means, you know, if you are able to play down Amaro and then evolve it, like say the next turn, you can get in for 4 with the Amaro and 3 with the Mach Knight, so 7 damage for not a whole lot of investment compared to the amount of damage output you've got. This also doesn't require us to choose a follower to play. We can, it does say heroic card, so we can choose the spell heroic entry if we don't have any good followers in our cemetery, if we're looking for a specific follower. Heroic entry lets us check the top 4 cards of deck and put any cost 3 or lower from among them into the field, and then it buffs it if it's heroic follower. So this does give us the option of, you know, evolve Amaro, recast heroic entry from cemetery, and then check top 4, find, say, a gem staff or a floral fencer or something like that. Moving into our 3 costs, we have Floral Fencer. This is just the eternal staple of Sword at 3 drop. It's just a 3-cost 3/3 evolve for 1. Evolved Floral Fencer makes a Knight and Steelclad Knight on evolve. Those are 1/1 and 2/2 tokens respectively. This is just really good for flooding the board. Multiple bodies are harder for most decks to answer than single bodies, so 7/7 in stats across 3 followers. Obviously, the execution or something of the like can only get rid of 4 damage at most. You're still getting in 3 with your 2 tokens. So helping spread it out like this is pretty good. Also makes Unbridled Fury stronger, obviously. So yeah, just a great card. You really want to draw this in the early game, just to keep pressure on your opponent. We have 3 Gem Staff Commander. another just staple for the deck always. 3 cost 3/2 Fanfare. Search your deck for a Swordcraft follower, reveal it, add it to hand. This could get you whatever you need. If you need a follower that has a removal effect, get it. If you need a follower to swarm the board, get it. If you need to get your Valiant Fencer to go off on your combo, go get it. Just whatever you want. It can search any follower. Mock Knight. This is the heroic card we already mentioned once. 3 cost 3/3 Fanfare. If this was put onto the field from anywhere other than your hand, give it Storm. So we are going to be trying to cheat this into play using either Amero's Evolve or the heroic entry spell. For 1 play point, this evolves into a 4/4. You're usually not going to be doing this on the turn that you cheat it into play unless it's through the spell, since you'll have to evolve other stuff in order to get it here. But when it evolves, you select an enemy follower on the field and deal it 2 damage. If you have at least 2 heroic cards in Cemetery, deal 4 instead. Oftentimes, by the time you have a chance to evolve this, it will be dealing 4. Either because heroic entry is in your Cemetery along with anything else, or because it's just late enough in the game that you've gone into your like Valiant Fencer Amaro combo plays. And this basically is, you can think of it like a Dragon Warrior that can go face. So really good. Using this as removal in the sort of mid-late game is just really powerful. 4 clears a number of good wards, especially looking at like Econodictus, though it is going to fall short of a few like 5/5s. Valiant Fencer is the main star of the show here. This is a 3 cost 2/2, which seems like low stats for an aggro deck, but I promise it does get better. Fanfare. Search your deck for a heroic card with a different name from this card, reveal it, and add it to your hand. Usually we're going to be searching either Amaro or heroic entry. Typically it's going to be Amaro. Iron Rot Defender, you're usually not going to want. Mock Knight, you're usually not going to want, since you want him in either deck or Cemetery. Big combo is going for the Amaro, because on Evolve, you pay 1, evolve into a 5/5, though it does require 2 or fewer cards in your hand, which means you are going to have to be playing actively aggressively. You can't play like the old sword decks in set 2, where you kind of just amass a hand of high-costed followers to dump on your opponent in the end game. On Evolve, select a heroic follower with an Evolve ability and evolve it. So basically all of our heroic followers do evolve, but as I said, Amaro is going to be your best search target because Amaro's evolve cost 3. Being able to do that for 0, and Amaro's evolve cheating out another follower into play from Cemetery, means we can play Valiant Fencer, search Amaro, play Amaro, evolve, evolve Amaro, summon Mock Knight from Cemetery, give Mock Knight Storm. We have a board for what, that's 5 play points going second, 6 play points going first, which is still pretty early to be making a board like that to pressure most decks, especially if they've been having to keep up with early aggression from your 1 cost 2/2s and the like. Last 3-drop we play is the Spell Heroic Entry. This card, look at top 4 of your deck, put a Swordcraft follower that costs 3 or less from among them onto your field. If it is heroic, give it +1/+1. Put the remaining cards in the bottom of your deck in any order. Obviously, the thing that we are searching for just above anything else is Mock Knight, since it is going to gain Storm coming in from this. If you go second, and your opponent plays a 3-drop, and then you go Heroic Entry, Mock Knight, Evo Point, deal 4 to your follower, and then hit them for 5, you've basically won the game, I feel like. Heroic Entry is just a super high roll card that can just demolish your opponent when it hits. But the low rolls usually don't feel too bad either. We do have 12 3-cost followers, as I said, so being able to get any of them is really pretty good. You can do the same thing, turn 3 going second, find a Floral Fencer and evolve it. Or even if you just find, you know, a Valiant Fencer. If you find a Gem Staff, you get to search for a Valiant Fencer for later or whatever you want. So even your low rolls feel pretty good, but the high rolls, man, it's just absurd how powerful this card is. I don't know why this is a bronze. Our 4-drop that we play 3 of, this is basically the top of our curve. It's Amelia Silver Paladin, 4-cost 3/3. Fanfare, choose one of the following. We can either choose a follower that costs 3 or less in our hand, which is basically all of our followers. Put it onto the field. Option 2, deal 4 to an enemy follower. If we've already established a board and our opponent just puts down wards or something, Amelia coming down to deal 4 and clear wards is pretty powerful. Otherwise, we can use Amelia to cheat in a 3 cost, which when you think about it, it really just makes Amelia a 1 cost 3/3 in addition to whatever we were playing anyway. And 1 cost 3/3 is pretty good rate. That is better than any of the 1 costs we actually have. You can use this for turn 4 going second, turn 5 going first, play Amelia, summon Floral Fencer, make a board. That's kind of the play that the decks have been doing in set 2. You can use this to play Mock Knight and evolve Mock Knight, which is basically the same as choosing the deal 4 mode on Amelia, except you get more board presence. Or you can use this to play Valiant Fencer, which again lets you go into the combo that you'd do anyway and get just extra board presence. And we have a billion summon targets here, so we always have something good to do. Moving into our tech one-ofs, these are kind of just our varying finisher options or sort of mid-game big drops to answer boards. First up, we have Albert, 4-drop 3/5 Storm. This is one of the only followers we have with just inherent storm damage in this deck. So even though we're an aggro deck, we do usually have to untap with things. Albert's the exception. He's going to go face straight away for 3 damage. If you pay 3 to evolve him, he stays a 3/5, but can attack 2 times. On strike, he refreshes once per turn. And on evolve, he doesn't take combat damage for the rest of the turn. Usually that's not going to matter. You're ideally not using him to clear followers on your opponent's board. But if you have to, you can do it safely and they'll still have to answer him. Usually this guy's just coming down and going straight for 6 face damage. Next we play Leonidas, a 6-drop 5/6. This guy has been sort of the namesake mainstay of the sword decks for all of set 2 and CP01 formats. Now we've just cut him down to 1 copy. He's kind of here just as a if we need it in the late game option. He does nothing on base form, but when you pay 1 to evolve him, you're going to get a 6/7 on evolve, deal 5 to an enemy follower, deal 5 to himself, making him a 6/2. Last words, summon a Leonidas' Resolve token. Becoming a 6/2 makes it really easy to just crash into like any 2/2 token or 2/3 or whatever. Your opponent has a 2/4 ward, you just crash into it and move on. The Leonidas' Resolve token is the reason you play this card. It's an 8-cost amulet. Whenever a Swordcraft follower is put onto your field, give it +3/+3 and rush. This basically means whatever we play is going to be enormous. Our opponent's going to struggle to remove it, and as soon as we untap, we turn everything sideways and just send our opponent into another dimension. It's also really good with Storm followers, obviously, because they get in immediately. But even if we're just playing things like Floral Fencer, that's going to give you a 7/7, a 5/5, and a 4/4, and they're all going to have a rush, so you can clear whatever's on your opponent's board immediately. Next we have Alexander. This is another card that we're just using for board clear mostly. 6-cost 5/9, rush and assail, meaning it's going to be able to attack whatever we want on our opponent's board the turn we play it. And during our turn, whenever this follower deals combat damage, which is damage to a follower, we refresh him. So we can play him down, attack whatever we want. We're going to live, we're a 5/9. Untap, attack again, untap, attack again, until our opponent just has nothing left on board. Oftentimes, if you can play this down and kill small enough things, you'll actually have enough defense left that your opponent still struggles to remove it, and he gets in for 5 more damage. Or, if your opponent just doesn't have anything on board, this is still a card you can play on 6 and just leave untapped. That your opponent probably can't deal 9 to unless they have execution or something. It's also worth noting that when he comes down and starts clearing followers, he will be refreshed going into your opponent's turn, since he hit a follower as the last thing he did, which means they won't be able to attack it. So pseudo intimidate there is really cool as well. Last follower we have is Narita Brian. This is a card that I don't expect to see coming out of sword decks for a long time. 8-cost 6/8 Bane Ward Aura. That is keyword soup. Activated ability, select an enemy leader or enemy follower on the field and deal it 5 damage. So this is effectively 5 storm damage, except it also gives us a defensive card to prevent our opponent from killing us. This is really good if you don't quite have lethal on your opponent and just need to stall a little bit longer, since it can get you into lethal range and provide a barrier that your opponent is unlikely to be able to get through without spending their entire turn doing so. It's also really good with Leonidas' Resolve, since it comes down as a 9/11, which is just nigh impossible to remove unless your opponent is playing Heavenly Aegis. Looking at the deck as a whole, it is pretty much a straightforward aggro deck. You're just trying to swarm the opponent and deal as much damage as possible, with a few top-end options if the game goes a little longer than you'd like. The pros of that is that a lot of decks are going to struggle with the early pressure if they don't have good removal spells. We have the ability to build really wide boards for low hand cost, since things like Floral Fencer and Valiant Fencer are either searching the cards for us to play and bringing them out of Cemetery, or they're making tokens. So even though we're going wide, we're not spending a lot of hand to do so. And decent Storm options at the top end. Albert is the only follower that actually has Storm, but Mach Knight can gain it, and Narita Brian is effectively 5 Storm damage. So we do have ways to close out the game, even if our opponent's playing defensively. Cons, however, we have a much lower tutor and cantrip count than previous Sword archetypes. We have cut Bellringer, we've cut Maid Leader, we've cut Avant Blader. None of those cards are in the deck anymore, which means we're not getting as many cantrips / tutors to get the exact cards we need. Then we have added Valiant Fencer back in. He does tutor a heroic card, which admittedly isn't as much of our deck as we'd like. We do have a small hand size post Valiant Fencer evolve, since he does require us to have 2 or fewer cards in hand. This can be pretty bad if you make the board with Valiant Fencer and it gets answered by like a Conflagration or Themistocry or anything like that, since you're only going to have 2 cards in hand at most. You'll draw for turn up to 3, but that might leave you in a position where it's hard for you to come back. And lastly, we do struggle to clear wards and push damage in the same turn, so Narita Brian is really one of our only ways to deal damage straight through wards. Otherwise, we're likely going to have to either choose whether we're spending our turn kind of attacking our opponent or attacking their wards if they have them. Alexander's great at clearing them, but he is going to take most of our turn when we play him. Taking a look at the main combo that we're trying to do in this deck, I did explain it a little bit when we were talking about Valiant Fencer. Valiant Fencer himself is kind of the enabler here. This is what we're using to set up huge boards. You can play Valiant Fencer, ideally on turn 5 going second or 6 going first. Hopefully you should be able to get down to 2 or less cards in hand by that point by playing aggressively. We can use him to search for Amaro, Spear Knight, play it as a 2-drop. So those are 5 play points. And then using our last play point or our evolution point, we can evolve Valiant Fencer. Using his on evolve effect, we can select Amaro, evolve it as well. And then using Amaro's effect to select a heroic card in Cemetery and play it for 0, we can play Mach Knight, which is going to gain Storm. Alternatively, we can start the combo off with either Heroic Entry or Amelia Silver Paladin, which is going to cost the same amount if you're using Heroic Entry, or cost you 1 extra play point if you're using Amelia. So that's turn 6 going second, 7 going first. Using either of these, we can put Valiant Fencer into play, and then go into the rest of the same combo. Funnily enough, we can also, if you're doing this late game, if you have Leonidas' Resolve in play, making this entire combo board off of an Amelia is going to give you 26/26 of stats, which is absolutely ridiculous. 6/6 of that actually has Storm and can go straight into the opponent. This kind of thing intrigues me. Making really wide boards like this in Uma Musume was something I enjoyed a lot. It was one of my favorite things about the deck. So this actually has me wondering if it might be worth testing a variant of this heroic deck where instead of playing aggressive, you're using more control options to sort of draw out into a longer game, and then use Valiant Fencer as just sort of a finisher once you've gotten to your Leonidas, and set up that way. I also think in this meta compared to the last meta, you're going to see a lot fewer ways to efficiently handle Leonidas. In the previous set, all the Haven builds, what few there were, pretty much all played Black and Scripture. Now I think they're moving away from that since they're mostly on the Humpty Dumpty package. Your Forest decks that move into the Fable package, their removal now is straight destroy effects and 3 damage, rather than the bottom deck effects they had previously. So I think there might be a world where Leonidas is a little safer here, and it might be worth playing harder into him just to set up these super powerful boards and end your opponent in one fell swoop, instead of risking Valiant Fencer putting you on a small hand size early and falling short of ending the game. Some other cards I was considering that aren't in this deck list. Clearly, Kira didn't play them for his Japan Championship second place, but there were some other Grand Prix lists and just smaller tournament topping lists I saw that played these cards, and I think they're pretty good in the deck. I just don't know where I'd fit them exactly. First up, we have Luminous Knight. This is a 2-cost 3/1. Fanfare, select another follower on your field, give it +1 attack. Last words, select a follower on your field, give it +1 attack. This card is a great just early aggro piece. Gives us more things to do on turn 2. If you play a 1-drop and your opponent doesn't immediately answer it right, you play Luminous Knight on 2. Say we play Iron Rot Defender, right? It's a 2/2. We play Luminous Knight, pump it to 3/2, hit our opponent for 3. Our opponent's options at that point are either answer our Iron Rot Defender, in which case Luminous Knight's going to hit them for 3 next turn, or answer the Luminous Knight, which is going to pump the Iron Rot Defender and we hit them for 4 next turn. So, really, it's a lose-lose for our opponent. They're taking extra damage, both on the turn we play Luminous Knight and on the next turn. So, I think this card's pretty good if you're really just trying to go all in on being aggressive rather than a little slower game. This card probably has to replace Amelia in the deck if you're going to do that, but I think I like Amelia's sort of mid-game presence more than Luminous Knight high-rolling the early game. Next, we have Tokai Teo from the Uma Musume set. This is a 5-drop 4/4. Fanfare, select an enemy follower on the field, deal it X damage. X is 2 times the number of followers on your field, including this one. And then it can evolve for 2 into a 5/5 with Storm. This is just a replacement for any of the 4 one-ofs that I showed off in the deck. You'd have to replace either Albert or Leonidas, since it's going to take evolved deck space, unless you want to cut back on maybe Mach Knight. But this card is a really good card. 5 storm damage is great, gives you more ways to close out the game immediately, and Tokai Teo's Fanfare effect is going to help you clear wards. Again, especially since we're able to make such wide boards so easily, it's pretty likely this is going to be able to come down and deal 6 damage just off the rip. It does count itself, so just having like some 1/1s or whatever survive and play Tokai Teo can clear out most wards pretty easily. The last thing that I've seen on a lot of lists is just extra 1-cost 2/2s for even more early aggression. You have access to both Goblin and Actress Faria from the new set. These are both 1-cost 2/2s. Neither of them is really better than the other here. Fable counters don't matter in this deck, and you're never evolving a Goblin. Downside to these compared to the 1-cost 2/2s we already play is that Leonidas' Resolve is not going to give them the +3/+3 in Rush because they're not Swordcraft followers. I also just think in general that you don't need this many 2/2s. I think the utility provided by Swordsman and Old Man and Old Woman is just a little better than what these give us. Taking another look at the full deck here. Again, you can check out the deck log code in the bottom right corner. That's Q8AB. It's just textbook aggro, really. We have lots of cheap dudes, lots of token makers, wide boards, hit our opponent a bunch, and win the game before they can really respond to all of our threats. And the Evolved deck, again, just 2 of all of our important things. 2 Amaro, 2 Floral Fencer, 2 Mach Knight, 2 Valiant Fencer, and then 1 copy of Albert and 1 copy of Leonidas to go with our singletons in the main board. Thank you for watching. This has been BoatsDon'tSink with another Shadowverse Evolve video. You should be a lot more coming in the next week or two, since BP03 Flame of Lævateinn has just released. We'll be covering a lot of new archetypes from it, so stay tuned for those. Those should be coming out, as I said, soon, or you can check out some videos that should be on the screen right now if you want to kill time until then. And we'll see you next time.